He was the kind of boy who always asked why. Why is the sky blue? Why do people lie? Why do I feel empty when I should feel happy? But the world didn't really answer. It just made more noise. People told him to grow up, to stop thinking so much. So one day he stopped asking. At the edge of his town, past the last row of houses, there was a hill. It wasn't special to most, but on top of that hill stood a tree. It wasn't the tallest or the strongest, but it felt different, as if it had been waiting for someone to notice. The boy climbed a hill and sat beneath it. At first there was only wind, but after a while the wind began to hum, and in that hum the boy felt something deeper, like the tree wasn't speaking in words, but in feelings, in a language older than sound, a language he didn't understand, but his heart did. He came back the next day, and the day after, not to ask questions, not to get answers, but just to listen in the silence. He heard things he had forgotten: how breathing slowly could ease pain, how stillness wasn't empty, it was full of something sacred. He began to speak not out loud, but inside. He told the tree about his fears, about feeling invisible, about the anger he didn't understand. The tree didn't move, didn't interrupt. It didn't try to fix him, it just stood, like it had always stood, strong and present. And somehow that was enough. People in town began to whisper, "He's the boy who talks to trees." They'd laugh, but he didn't mind, because what the tree had taught him was rare. How to be lonely without feeling lonely. How to listen, not just to others but to yourself. Time passed. Spring turned to summer. Summer melted into autumn. The boy sat through all of it, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, but always returning, because beneath that tree, he was not performing, he was simply being. The tree never gave him advice. It never told him what to do. It didn't solve anything, but it reflected him like a mirror made of bark and silence. And in that reflection, he began to understand who he truly was. One day, a violent storm came. The town panicked, the sky roared. But the boy didn't run. He climbed the hill and held the tree. It didn't move, it didn't bend. Its roots dug deep, and its trunk held firm. And in that moment, so did he. That night, he realized the tree had never really spoken. It was never about the tree at all. It was about what awakened in him when the noise stopped. The quiet wasn't outside. It was something he carried now, wherever he went. He grew older, left the town, faced love, failure, heartbreak. But when life got loud again, he closed his eyes and heard the tree, not as a voice, but as a feeling, grounded, steady, and moving, like a whisper beneath the noise. Years later, children began to climb that same hill. They too sat beneath the tree. They too came with questions. And though the tree still said nothing, it still answered. The silence knew exactly what they needed to hear. The boy, now a man with grey in his hair, returned. He didn't come to ask anything. He just sat beneath the tree that once taught him how to listen. He didn't need words anymore. The silence was enough. To others, it was just a tree, a place for shade, for rest. But to him, it was the beginning of everything. His first teacher, his oldest friend, a sacred mirror that never lied, never hurried, never left. It never spoke out loud, but it taught him everything, because some of the greatest truths do not come as answers. They come as stillness, and sometimes the wisest voices have roots.